We're live, man. How's it going, big dog?
Oh, what's up, Patrick Findaro? Cool. This is our, I think, first live stream, right?
First live.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I'd like to say welcome to everyone to today's live stream. My name's Alaattin. Maybe it's the first time you're hearing my name, although I appeared a few times in the channel before. There is about a little bit of a confusion in my, in my name, how people, Americans pronounce it very differently. They pronounce it Alaattin, but having the name Alaattin Patrick is very interesting because people ask about, oh, where's your genie? Where's your carpet? And me being a quote unquote immigrant or a non-immigrant in America, I'd like to make some jokes. I'd say stuff like, oh, genie's visa's denied and he's over there in Turkey with my uncle, or the carpet is at the customs and stuff like that. So I'd like to start with a few, Middle Eastern quote unquote immigrant jokes to break the ice. But it's really great to be here. The immigration system in America is amazing based on my experience. And today we'll be talking about the E2 visa. We have some big news on the E2 visa front, and we're going to dive deep into the numbers. And in terms of the headline, I think we want to headline this, Patrick, as E2 visa approvals hit their highest number ever.
Record year. 2024 was a record year. And taking a step back, like some people were probably asking, wait, it's not over yet. It's December 17th that we're filming, but it's the government fiscal year that ends September 30th. So we have going through the Department of State website, we do have the data going nationality month by month of issuances. So we have the 2024 data and we have going back 10 plus years. And we're going to make predictions too for 2025.
Right. And numbers tell a different story, Patrick. I mean, some countries saw incredible growth. We're going to talk about it, but the likes of Colombia, France, Turkey, and some countries dipped below, like Mexico and Australia. But I guess in today's session, what I want to do is to break down the stats, discuss why certain countries are seeing these major shifts, both up and down, and share what we think might happen when Trump administration returns in 2024. And of course, we'll try to end it with actionable advice to help you navigate the E2 visa process successfully. So I'd say stick around, ask your questions in the chat, and let's dive deep. I mean, Patrick, what is your take on the numbers? You've been doing this for the past 10 years. You're seeing a year-on-year increase. What is your take on it?
The U.S. is open for business, and a lot of people complain, or I've heard complaints, especially from people born in the U.S., that it's doom and gloom, that there's all these issues in the U.S. But the reality is, there's issues everywhere in the world, and there's problems everywhere. And compared to a lot of countries, the U.S. is in a brighter position, and investors, serious entrepreneurs, still want to move to the U.S., whether it's making money for their family or providing good educational opportunities for their families. So there's always demand. And I think where there's a will, there's a way. And the E2 visa, it had its setbacks during the COVID with long delays, especially in consulates like Colombia or Chile, where they were closed for 1-2 years. But we're seeing approvals as soon as 2 weeks now. Canada recently 3 weeks, some other consulates less than 3 weeks. So we're seeing business, things are back in business, and we're pretty excited in terms of what 2025 has in store. And we're going to be tracking the data monthly as it comes in. But just a bit of a summary, and I'll zoom in a little more.
You
Patrick,
can see before we start, can you make this
Yeah.
distinction? Japan and South Korea E2 visas are different than the E2 visas in general. Can you please shed light on that first, and then we go to the numbers?
Definitely. So there's something called there's the E2 visa, and there's one for essential employees and managers. And then there's also the E2 visa that is for investors. Think about someone opening up a small business, bringing their business from abroad. So you have the two categories. One is for, me and you, entrepreneurs, opening up a small business. We're doing it with our own capital principally. And then the other one would be Siemens, for example, a German conglomerate, sending over essential employees to work in the factories in the US, or managers to be at the manager level, or it could be South Korean companies sending over executives to work at, LG, for example, or Japanese banks sending over their executives, or essential employees. So a lot of the Asian countries, and to a lesser degree in Europe, with France, even Club Med here in Miami sponsors E2 visa managers, have been utilizing this visa category for bringing over those employees. And then you have other countries like Canada, where, talking to former consulate staffers, the majority of the issuances are for investors. People opening up franchise businesses, bringing their business down from Canada. Say they were an accountant or tradesman in Canada, they're bringing that same business down here. So some consulates, you see a lot more small business owners. We see that in Turkey, Argentina, Canada, Colombia, and other consulates, other nationalities like Japan, South Korea. You have these well-oiled, machines, conglomerates that are just sending over hundreds of executives a year to power their business in the U.S.
Right. But it's interesting. So you always have Japan and South Korea at the very top. But for our audience, I think what is important are, the individual entrepreneurs and investors coming over here to the U.S. Let's dive into the numbers a little bit and see what the trends are. I mean, at the high, we have a few countries who seem to really like the E2 visa.
Canada, starting with Canada, 2024 went up to 6,800 E2 visa issuances, and that includes also some of the renewals that are coming about. But if you're applying for an E2 visa for the first time as a Canadian, you got to apply in Toronto. Then you can renew it in other consulates. But major increase. And I think from our client base, Alaattin, it's probably gone up 30-40% year over year. So I guess we've captured some market share along the process. And then the overall growth for Canada has been higher single digits, 9%, when you compare 2023 to 2024.
It's pretty significant. You're talking about what, extra 600 applications?
Yeah, think about that for the U.S. economy. Is Trump going to make it harder for Canadians that are creating another 5 jobs, 10 American jobs through W-2 employees as well as 1099 contractors?
Yeah. And an average investment is, suppose that the average investment is $100,000. So you got 600 new people coming. How much money is that? 60 million?
Maybe 600 times 100,000. Would that be 600 million? Yeah. 600. Is that right? 600 million?
No. If it was a million, it would be 600 million. I think 60 million.
60 million.
Yeah.
$60 million extra dollars. But that also trickles down. That's the initial investment.
Yes.
And then you have Germany, where our interest is blowing up. Every month we're signing up German clients. And it comes at no surprise. I think this is going to grow even more. I wouldn't be surprised if it hits 4,100, even more. Just the political situation, and they'll have 2 years of negative GDP growth, GDP decline in Germany. So social, political pressures. There's no lack of work ethic for Germans. So they're finding that they're able to make more money and grow more in the U.S. So I think Germany is going to increase. France, where the government collapsed, a lot of turmoil in terms of political scene, and let's see with Macron cozying up with Trump. He lobbied hard for the French visa term to go up to 48 months. It was at 5 years, went down to I think 2 years, then 48 months. So the E2 visa is a nice, viable path for French entrepreneurs.
The next 4 years are going to be the toughest years of Macron. because his big friend Trump is coming. He's gonna be like, Emmanuel, you gotta listen to me, Emmanuel. Oh no, Donald, we can't do it, Donald. It's I hope that was a genuine conversation between Trump and Emmanuel Macron. If it was,
I'm curious what happened, at Notre Dame, but it seemed like he was like him and Elon were kind of like the guests of honor at that reopening.
Donald Trump and Elon.
Yeah, I mean they flew to the reopening in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and all the attention was on them.
No, this is so funny and crazy, but France is up. So we're gonna continue with our rundown, but I'd like to read the questions as they come. So we have one question here from David. He asked, "What industries or businesses are you seeing most Brazilians invest in for E2?"
That's a great question, David. I would say it depends on their level of fluency in English. If they're mostly speaking, Portuguese, and maybe they have some Spanish and they're moving to a market in Florida, probably going to be somewhere where it's a captive audience. So it could be a restaurant or something that the client comes to you. And then those that dominate, English more at a low level of fluency, C1 or even C2, totally bilingual level of English, we're seeing a lot more service-based businesses. So overall with our Brazilian clients, a lot of them speak English quite well. So they're doing service-based businesses for their E2 investment.
Cool. Alaattin, let's carry on. Oh, hold on. We have another.
Marcelo Santos asking, and he could be a Brazilian, but he could be from another. He could be a Latino from a Spanish-speaking country. What's your opinion on franchise versus starting your new business? Investing in franchise makes E2 visa process smoother compared to independent business. Answering the second question, generally, yes, it's smoother. You're more credible for the consulate interview. And we've had that verified with speaking to consulate staffers, ex-consulate officers, our clients that are going to interviews. Sometimes they just have 3 questions while the other person at the window next to them is being battered with their business model, where the franchise allows the E2 visa applicant to come in and say, this isn't just my half-baked idea. There's been 50, 100, 200 other people, and this is the financials as per the franchise disclosure document, which is a federally regulated document. But if you already are in the US and you're already selling to Americans, why not use that vehicle if it meets the E2 visa criteria, especially if you're employing Americans, already hired Americans. So I think it just depends. And, we'd be happy to see your business. If you're just thinking about starting a random business, but you're not really sure, it might be better to go with a franchise. But if you already have your business and maybe you're in Canada and you're already selling to Americans, we had a client approved the other day for an E2 visa, 60% of his clients were American. So for him, probably makes more sense just to bring his business from Canada. Where if you're looking to, go new in the United States, might not make as much sense.
Sure.
Should we go back to the data, Alaattin?
Yes. Let's carry on with the data, and we'll try to answer all the questions at the very end. But from time to time, as we move along the sections, I'll be pulling in 1 or 2 questions, and we'll make it interactive that way.
Taiwan, man, what's going to happen with Taiwan?
So that's a very interesting part of the world. Obviously, the Taiwanese really like the U.S. and the U.S. Business economy, and Taiwan is situated in that part of the world where it's just one decision away from some political instability and etc. But it seems like it's a country that really likes the business atmosphere here. And we see a year-over-year increase over 1%. Looks pretty steady.
I think that's going to go way up than 1%. You start seeing more military exercises or trade issues that could potentially affect Taiwan. I don't know. I could see that being 10, 20%.
Yeah, they got a big dog next to them, China.
Yeah. And you're already seeing Taiwanese, making that first step, maybe going to, a temporary place where they then, will make the final move to the U.S. I've heard that, Canada has been, a top spot but then they, decide they don't like it there for whatever reason and then come to the US. So we're already seeing, some Taiwanese leaving and finding a country that I think that won't be the end country that they end up moving to.
Right. How about the UK? We got what, 4% decline?
Yeah, that's what I was surprised with, but something that I keep hearing a lot in from our clients and even prospective clients that we're having calls with is just the weather was horrible, where it was like July and it felt like winter. So it sounds silly, but I think that can play an effect where 2024 was really, pretty bad weather throughout the UK business environment. We talked to the IT professionals that are able to make 50%, 100% more in the US. They speak the language. It's people have gotten accustomed to remote work. And I think in Europe and the UK, people are trying to rein in that remote work. And it's being reined in the US too, with very large companies and the US government, but small, medium enterprises generally are still favorable, especially if you're at the top of the game. So I think that number is gonna go up a bit. I don't anticipate, further decrease. So that I would say more that should be like 2,900 for next year.
I think so as well. But the big surprise is Mexico. You would expect Mexico to have much.
Well, it's gotten expensive. The peso went down in value. It's gotten a lot more expensive for someone to come up with the cash to invest in the US. And I think a similar thing with Argentina, where Argentina is kind of a wild card. It could be 500, it could be 1,000 for 2025. Depending if Argentines have shares in those Argentine publicly traded companies that have gone up, many of them 100% plus this year, some 400%. So it's been wild for those that have ownership in Argentine companies, and then they might take that off the table. And there's all different types of policies that Malay has enacted that hurt short term, but we might see some movement to the United States.
You remember we had the offsite here in Miami with our team members, and one of our team members who's an Argentinian, and she was basically saying that Milei seems to be doing what he said he was going to do, which is quite rare. And we kind of cracked up. I'm like, what do you mean, which is quite rare? He said, yeah, I mean, it was quite rare. Politicians make up these big claims that, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And once they take the office, not everything comes to fruition. And in Milei's case, apparently, he's doing what he said he was going to do. And he's taking he's having a good run in this, inflation and in stabilizing the country's economy. Maybe that could definitely have an effect.
Yeah, no, I think it's exciting things to see in Argentina. As you know, Alaattin, we have about 20 employees down in Argentina that work for us at Visa Franchise and our sister company Vetted Biz. So cool. We're cheering for him. We want Argentina to succeed, and I think we could see tremendous growth there on the E2 visa issuance side. And we see
let's spice it up a little bit. Let's read this question. I am a Canadian with a healthcare background and would like to use the E2 visa process to immigrate to the US. Which would be the best state for a senior care business?
For a senior care business, it depends on, I would say, how fast you need to make money, because you have states that regulate senior care businesses and say in-home healthcare differently, or in-home care. So there's certain states like Alabama that you can, open, and they're lightly regulated, even Texas for certain services, where Florida is going to take more time. New York's heavily regulated. So it's going to depend on, I would say, how much cash reserves you have, as well as appetite to think long-term. But I would say overall, where there's a lot of elderly people moving, or there's already an existing population, so the sunshine states, but there's still demand, in states like Maine that have a very high percentage of elderly people in the population. So, we've had clients, maybe 30 plus clients invest in healthcare related businesses across 6 different franchise brands and other independent businesses that they've invested in. So I wouldn't say there's one size fits all.
But I think Florida seems to be still a solid option as people come here to retire.
Yeah, I don't see that. That dying down. No pun intended.
Cool. Can you talk a bit about the renewal process? Is it easier to renew the E2 visa after you've been approved the first time? I know some questions would be out of context, but I would like to, answer everybody. So even if it's a brief answer, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, so out of our clients, we've been doing this now for almost 10 years. I would say, 20% of our clients actually renew their E2 visas. 20% go home. So they could be coming from Chile, Turkey. They get the U.S. experience. They do business. They have their kids enroll in public school, become fluent in English, and then they go home. The truly non-immigrant intent of the E2 visa category. And then 50% plus, they end up getting a green card. So we've had clients get green cards EB3, EB2, EB1A, EB1C, EB5. There's all different types of categories to get a green card. We've seen pretty much it all, even single E2 visa investors getting married and getting the green card that way. So is it easier to renew after you've been approved the first time? If you applied, you're following the business plan, you executed the business plan, it should be straightforward. If you go in for renewal and you don't have many Americans working for you or you haven't made much money, we're going to have to work closely with your immigration attorney on that business plan and how you're going to sell that E2 visa consulate officer that they should renew and that you should stay in the U.S. But if you're going to go into the renewal and you have 10 Americans, contractors, employees, and that officer doesn't give the renewal and you have to close the business, fire Americans, that's not good for the US too. So a lot of the cases I see of not getting renewed is the business is basically not really operational. Or, there's one guy working, 2 guys working, and it doesn't make much money. So make a lot of money and ideally hire a lot of Americans and you should be fine on the renewal.
Cool. Let's read this statement and then let's carry on. No better people to guide through the visa process than Visa Franchise. No, I'm not an affiliate. The best at what they do. This is, how do you feel, Patrick, when you have people like, Kim Perota?
Well, and thanks, Kim. I appreciate that. Kim was quite critical in the beginning of what we were doing at our sister company, Vetted Biz, and he really pushed us hard in terms of our analysis on franchises. And then we had a lot of good debates, and I learned a lot from Kim. So I appreciate the positive praise for us at Visa Franchise, and keep the positive comments coming as well as the constructive comments, Kim and everyone.
Now this is so true, because we're not perfect, and we're running a team, and we're dealing with a lot of franchisors, different visa types, rules and regulations in different states, and it's sometimes like everywhere, it's a service business, right? Our processes, certain things we might overlook, and we would always want to hear from our clients who have currently become our clients, or spectators or viewers or audience, to sort of tell us, hey guys, I've seen these things. You could do this better. You could do that better. Or I don't like this, or like this. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. We don't want to make the same mistake twice. So we're going to make mistakes. Let's all learn collectively from our mistakes, and appreciate that, Alaattin. Should we go back on the statistics a little bit?
Let's do it.
So, Alaattin, you're from Turkey. You grew up in Turkey. in some circles, you're a celebrity in Turkey. And for those that don't know Alaattin, he was a client, came to us on the E2 visa. He wanted to do the E2 visa. I presented the option with the O1. The immigration attorney vetted that it was a viable match for Alaattin. It made sense. And then working with our team and the filing attorney, he got the O1 visa. We ended up sponsoring him, and he works with us full time. So there is interest for the E2 visa in Turkey, but I'd like to hear your predictions. What's going on in Turkey, and is there going to be another year of 29% growth?
Sure, it could even be much more. But what my understanding is that Turkey is in a part of the world where things move quickly, and there are so many different actors. You got the Middle East, you got a place like Iraq and Syria, and certain things that are taking place. Obviously, there's the overall economy. The Turkish people, are used to these changes or big hikes, but at the end of the day, it's a place where certain political changes and certain changes in the economic policies push certain people away, or rather than pushing them away, would put them in a situation where they would need to diversify and they would need a second option. Yeah, Turkey is in general a great country, and it has a pretty good and a solid economy. So it's not like, and as you can see the numbers, it doesn't have a huge or high number, but there's certainly a big time increase. Some of the reasons are definitely the instability of the Turkish lira, which is stabilized now, but the inflation's been running crazy, so that kind of pushed certain people away or towards this side to seek more E2 visas or green card options or visas. I do expect the upcoming year to have an increase in the similar level, and I would expect that a steady increase that is coming out of Turkey.
And how about to your friends in the South, Israel? What can we expect there? And I have my own opinions. I'm curious to hear from you. Talking a lot of Israel.
So, I mean, obviously, it's again, Israel is located in the part of the region where the situation is, very diligent, and it moves. And I mean, look at what happened in Syria just a week ago. The Assad regime collapsed after 14 years of civil war. I covered, the 3 years of the war, so I know how major of a change that was. Of course, it would have the ripple effects around the in the region. Whether that's Turkey or Israel, things that are happening in the region, or the political problems or the issues they have, it's pushing a lot of people away. And this is what I understand as far as business is concerned. People are kind of tired of dealing with these ups and downs and uncertainties, and especially business people, they don't really care too much about who's right, who's wrong, what to do, what not to do. They just say, you know what, I need stability, dude. I don't need just another armed conflict. I don't need to deal with all that stuff. I just want to live a good life and make sure that I can see the next 5 years, the next 10 years. Obviously, the region doesn't really allow that. So people make their way here.
Yeah, I've seen really a divided Israel where, I talk to a lot of families, husband and wife. Usually one of them works in tech. One, if not both, are STEM professionals. They're doing something science, tech related. And it's pretty easy for one of them to get a job. So one of them does an E2 visa investment in their own startup or franchise, and the other one has work authorization. And oftentimes they have a couple kids, and they're more concerned with their immediate family than whatever statehood and fighting for the nationality that they possess. So they're looking at protection for their family, and they see that there's more protection in the US, and they want to move to the US. So I've seen that time and time again. And Israelis, as pretty much all the nationalities that we went through, adapt pretty well in the US. There's already a strong network and community. So I see that going up. I think there's going to be 800 issuances for the E2 visa in 2025 for Israeli nationals.
But look at Colombia, man, 73% increase. Now there's got to be something there, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think 2025 is going to be as big for Colombia. There were serious issues with just processing the visas where the consulate was closed for so much time during COVID. I think it was almost 2 years. Our clients had to look to apply in other consulates like Brazil or up in Canada. It was just like a total pain for our clients applying in Colombia, those Colombian nationals. And then they even sent, consulate staffers from other consulates to try to help the processing of E2 visas. So staffers coming up from Brazil, the U.S. consulate down there, to help with training and support. And it looks like they're starting to really get their act together at the U.S. consulate in Colombia. But it's not like other consulates. It's still taking, I think, at least 6 months to schedule a consulate interview, where I mentioned Canada 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get a consulate interview. Brazil less than a month. So there's been progress, but there's a lot of people applying in Colombia, and I think part of that's due to just this backlog of cases. So I don't see as big of an increase, but it's something to monitor, and especially with the political situation and social situation and economic situation in Colombia, it could go up.
Okay, Patrick, right there, let me ask you a question, and I think this is what our clients would want to know. Say for our clients from countries the likes of Colombia or elsewhere, where they're experiencing huge, backlogs on the consulate when it comes to scheduling interviews and etc. What would be your strategy? I mean, would you send them to, say, Canada or another consulate? Would they be accepted? How does that process look like?
Yeah, no, definitely, Alaattin. Well, you know our business model because you were a client. We have our own in-house attorney, but we also have a network of filing attorneys. So say this year, probably about 200 clients we'll won the year with, and maybe 20 different filing attorneys. So we're in constant contact with some of the best minds in immigration to see adjudicating patterns, and generally after the first month, our client's going to decide on which attorney is best suited to handle their case. And usually that attorney has experience with that nationality, understands what consulates are, accepting third-party nationals at a time. Very popular one being Canada, where there's 25% applicants have no ties to Canada. They don't have a Canadian passport. They don't live in Canada. And they're applying for their E2 visa out of Canada. Maybe they're residing in the US, or there's major backlogs in their home country. And the US consulate, as far as of today, and has been for quite some time, is welcome to take those cases. And then you see other countries that open and shut for third-party nationals. Again, people that don't have a passport or residency in that country, where Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Asian countries, countries throughout Asia, I should say, that are open to third-party nationals coming in. And like our friends and your compatriots in Turkey, E2 visa interviews are taking over a year. It's a joke. So there are other places in the region to be able to schedule an E2 visa consulate, and they're warm to having a Turkish national, apply for the E2 visa there. So we have intel. We rely on the experts. We share information within our network of attorneys, information we collect from our clients, from the attorneys, from former consulate staffers, officers. So with that, the ultimate filing attorney is going to be the one to set the strategy on where to apply.
Right. Cool. So we went through the numbers. We went through some of the questions. And what do you think, Patrick? Shall we dive a bit deeper into what is expecting us with the Trump administration, or do you want to, spend a few more minutes on the numbers to sort of like wrap it up?
I think there's going to be a big boost. We didn't mention South Korea. We kind of skipped over because traditionally it's been the corporates, but there have there are a sizable number of entrepreneurs that are moving to the US and E2. And I think with the political situation in Korea and martial law for 24 hours, storming the Congress, we've noticed an uptick in South Koreans looking to apply for the E2 visa. Not sure of what business to apply, so looking at franchises. So I do think South Korea is going to increase much more than that 2%. And then Japan, I don't know if you saw that news with the CEO of SoftBank pledging $100 billion with Trump, an investment in the United States. So one of the largest Japanese financial institutions is looking to invest $100 billion in the U.S. He did that at a Trump event. So with all that money, there's probably going to be a lot of E2 visa managers coming over to make sure that their investments are working and they're operating the way they want. So Trump added on that he wanted 200 billion. He wasn't happy with just 100 billion, and he was pushing him for even more.
I spoke to the SoftBank. They were real soft, real nice. I really liked them, but I'm bringing $100 billion from the SoftBank in a soft way. You're going to see we're going to do great, folks. Really like Japan. Japan's my favorite country. I like all the sushis and ramens and whatever. But hey, we made the deal happen.
Yes, I mean, we'll see. But I'm pretty bullish that a lot of these countries are gonna really increase in terms of visa issuances going into 2025, and then even some of the ones that had drops like Chile, and part of that again was the visa backlog. Chile dropped 50%, but we've noticed an uptick in Chileans over the last 3 months. So some of these countries are going to bounce back.
Something's happening in the chat. One of our audience member asked a question about what's the acceptance rate for E2 for Pakistani residents. Secondly, is investing $100K for a mobile shop in Texas would be enough? Before we get there, somebody has answered the question and said, yes, 100K is good, but you need a business plan. So hold on. This is how I want to approach this before you putting the answer. Can you first of all go back to the Pakistan numbers? Let's look at the Pakistan numbers, and then let's talk about the Pakistani situation a little bit, because it seems like it's the country with the biggest demand, but it's not as high on the approvals.
Part of that is because a lot of Pakistanis come to the US on a B1, B2. And they look at businesses to buy, existing businesses, start their business from the US while they're here, or do a franchise. So a lot of them are adjusting status, and they're not getting the E2 visa at the consulate or embassy in Pakistan, or many Pakistani expats in the UAE, Saudi Arabia. So the numbers are a bit distorted. And USAS is not reporting the numbers to the State Department, because 83, we would have what, like a good chunk of that, like 20% of all Pakistanis or more. So I'd love to have 20% of Pakistanis, but I think the real number of those obtaining E2 visa status in the US is probably closer to in the range of 500 to 1,000. Because you have a lot of Pakistani entrepreneurs operating small businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that was real strange on the numbers. Exactly like what you said, that we have a lot of people coming from countries such as Bangladesh and Pakistan, and there is this stigma. I mean, people don't want to go to the Pakistani consulate. I think is it because of the amount of horror stories that people heard? I don't know. What's your take on that?
It's a bit, I think
you're doing the right thing, Patrick, right? Say you substantial amount of businesses and marginal businesses open and running, and there are legitimate reasons why you got to be in the US to run and operate, and the funds are at risk. If you've done the right things, would there be a basis why would the consulate reject you? Like seriously.
I think some consulates are just more are just harder on applicants, and we've done studies in the past where if you look at like the adjusted, like what I'm going through right now, the B1 B2 adjusted refusal rate, and then
Mm-hmm.
we parlayed that data with the number of people that overstay visas for that same country.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it made sense. But if you look, and this is a bit controversial, we looked at predominantly Muslim countries as well as predominantly Black countries. And there shouldn't be that many refusals based on the number of people that overstay their visas from that set country. So, maybe I'm missing some of the data where people are coming in illegally, and the State Department also adds that into how they're looking at these. But yeah, it's, I think it creates a serious problem for us in the US that they're denying 46%. And these people, if they're denied, it's like, well, I tried the legal way. Maybe I'll just go south of Mexico and come in that way. So I think sadly we're seeing a lot of that. But if you're a legitimate, if like for Pakistan, you probably don't want to go for the B1 B2 visa on your own, where a lot of countries it's totally fine. You want to have your ducks in a row and probably working with an attorney to file like a good initial tourist and business visa, and then going through the E2 later. But it's not like 100% of people are getting denied. It's still 50%. And especially our clients and people that are doing the E2 visa, investor visa, they're a lot more serious than like the masses that are getting rejected. So I wouldn't be discouraged if you're Pakistani looking to apply in Pakistan. You just have to be, it's a little harder than if you're applying from a country like Argentina that also has a B1, B2 requirement. They don't have visa-free travel, and it's only a 9% denial rate for those nationals.
Yeah, there is also this example, right? I mean, I got a gift from my uncle, $30,000, and opened up a smoke shop in Ohio. Yeah, of course you would get denied if you do stuff like that.
And part of it could be like the businesses,
Right.
So someone said like a mobile business. Well, how many Americans are you employing? How much money are you going to be making? Where if you're thinking a little bigger and trying to grow a business that does $1 million, $2 million of revenue, a clear path, and you're going to create an empire, mobile repair, businesses, that's a different story. But that could lead into the denial as well.
Cool. All right, Patrick. Let's talk about the. Let's go to the final section of the live stream. So Trump administration is expected to assume the office January 20th, and there's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk in the forms of, how they're going to approach the immigration system. They say Trump loves immigration, right? But he doesn't like illegal immigration. So there has always been the talk of, why don't we facilitate the investors and entrepreneurs and top professionals and talent coming to the U.S. and then impose certain implications on the illegal side of things. Given the whole political rhetoric that we've been hearing about for the past year and a half, what is your expectation once the Trump administration assumes office? Are we gonna see more E2 visa approvals, more applications, or is it gonna be like, hold on, we want to see what the new government will do?
I think the applications are going to go up, and the approval rate should be kind of the same. It's been, even during Trump's first term, it was around, I think it ranged 87% to 90%. Over the last 10 years, it's been like 87 to 93% for the adjusted approval rate for the E2. Keep in mind that does also include the people being transferred as employees, managers that have a higher approval rate. But for individual investors, you still have a very good shot. And I think there's also a lot of immigrants now that are in Trump's ear, or first generation immigrants, second generation immigrants that are part of his cabinet now. So investors, top talent, especially if it's anything STEM related, I think are going to continue to be approved at a very high rate. And we see that with the E2 investor visa. We see that with the O1 talent visa that you came on. The approval rates are high. It's been around 90% over the past few years. So I think that's going to continue to stay high. And then the pressure is higher on the green card, because that leads to citizenship. So there could be some crackdown, on green card applications, whether it's investment or talent. So for people to really be serious about, what they're doing in the United States and really growing and proving to the U.S. government why you deserve to stay here and become a U.S. citizen.
Sure. Okay, Patrick. I think, it's been 45 minutes. I think this is good enough. I'd like to give the closing to you. What would be your advice to our audience looking to embark on this journey? How could they get in touch with us? What we can do for them? And how would that journey look like?
Thanks, Alaattin. So I think first is paint yourself, a vision of what you want to do in the United States. So it's like, forget the visa. What do you want to do in the United States? How do you want to make money? How do you want to provide for your family? How do you want to spend your life? And with that, at Visa Franchise, we can work with you. We'll figure out the visa. We'll bring in the attorneys. We'll figure out what makes sense for you short term as well as long term. But really understand, what do you want to be doing with your career? And then let's work together to make that happen. So, there's all different types of visa categories. We went through just the E2 visa today, but across the investor and talent scale, we're able to support you. So if you're an entrepreneur, high performance employee, manager looking to move to the US, we've developed different solutions to get there. And the easiest would be just to complete our client application. So we get more information. We see if there's a mutual fit. That's on our website, visafranchise.com. And then from there, have a call with Alaattin, myself, one of our other colleagues, to see if there's a mutual fit. And then we can get started on your case. And we're starting to see people start signing up because they want to enroll their kids in school in August. They want to make the move in July. So I would say, if you want to move in the summer 2024, you got to get going now. January, February max. Going into March, we're not taking on new clients that want to move in the summer. There's select cases maybe for Canadians where we're very confident on the adjudication trends there. But if you're looking to move in the summer 2025, you got to get started in the next, say 30, 60 days max with the process. So you're making a good decisions, and you're not cutting corners. So, it's a serious decision. You're looking to invest your hard-earned money in a business. Make damn sure that it's a business that you want to be working in, you want to be growing in. No one's going to care about the business as much as you. So just be very, very mindful about it, and consume information from us at Visa Franchise, but also other experts in the space to make an educated decision.
Cool. Patrick, thank you very much for that. And guys, thank you very much for sticking by. We want to do more of these. I really like this, Patrick. We should do more of these.
Well, let's do it, man.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Patrick. And guys, see you in the next one.
Take care.
Bye.